The meeting between US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin will take place next Friday in Alaska. Trump wrote about this on his social network Truth Social, promising more details to come. He also outlined the contours of his future agreements with Putin. This is an exchange of Ukrainian territories. Some of them will be returned and some will be traded. That's what Trump said. TSN's own correspondent in the US, Olha Koshelenko, has the details.
A wonderful place that you will like. That's how Donald Trump teased the location of his meeting with Putin before revealing his hand. It will be the American state of Alaska. The specific city has not been disclosed yet.
The long-awaited meeting between myself as President of the United States and the leader of Russia, Vladimir Putin, will take place next Friday, August 15, 2025, in the great state of Alaska. Further details will be announced later. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
It's not a given that this beautiful place will appeal to Putin, the land gatherer, since until 1867 Alaska belonged to the Russian Empire, which officially sold it to the Americans for over $7 million in gold. Alaska was not included in the initial list of possible meeting places for Trump and Putin. Fox News reports that the Russians insisted on Hungary and rejected Italy because of its support for Ukraine. But as a result, for Trump it will be something of a home game. As for the subject of the agreements, the President of the United States announces a certain exchange of Ukrainian territories.
It's complicated. In fact, it's not easy at all. It's very complicated. But we are going to get some things back, and some things will be exchanged. There will be a certain exchange of territories for the benefit of both sides. But we'll talk about this later, or tomorrow, or sometime.
The position of the President of Ukraine has always been that he will not agree to recognize Ukrainian regions as Russian. Moreover, this contradicts the Ukrainian constitution, and the president simply does not have the authority to make such decisions. Trump stated Zelensky will have to prepare to resolve the issue.
You know that he is not authorized to do certain things. I said, well, you'll have to do it quickly because we're very close to an agreement. President Zelensky must get everything he needs because he will have to prepare to sign something. I think he is working hard on it.
Quite a few issues remain unresolved. If Trump and Putin reach some kind of agreement next Friday without Ukraine's participation or consent, how will they implement the agreements they've made? If we're talking about returning and exchanging territories, as Trump mentions, the question arises, what does Putin want in return? The New York Times suggests that he is willing to give up some of the occupied territories in exchange for something bigger, Ukraine's political subordination. Putin seeks to limit Ukraine's military capabilities, to ban its accession to NATO, and in general, any military cooperation with the West, and ideally, to establish a pro-Russian government in Kyiv. This is exactly what, according to journalists, he will try to achieve during direct contact with Trump. From Washington, United States, Olha Koshelenko, Maxim Shinkarenko, TSN 1+1 Marathon, United News.
Ukrainian high-ranking officials are planning to meet with Europeans and Americans in the United Kingdom to coordinate their positions ahead of the Trump-Putin meeting. Axios reports that the talks are supposedly set to take place as soon as this weekend, and the idea itself was conceived just recently during a joint video conference. Ukraine and some NATO allies, according to journalists, are concerned that Trump might agree to Putin's terms without taking their positions into account. In Kyiv, they say that they do not fully understand the details of the Russian position or the position of the United States. And one of Ukraine's representatives told Axios that even if Volodymyr Zelenskyy agrees to Putin's demands, he would be forced to call a referendum, since under Ukraine's constitution, he cannot cede territory. 3.2 billion to support Ukraine. The EU Council has approved the fourth regular payment under the Ukraine Facility Program. These funds are intended, in particular, to strengthen Ukraine's macro-financial stability and support the functioning of the public administration system. Overall, the Ukraine Facility Program provides for up to 50 billion euros in payments. The EU ties the provision of funds to Ukraine's implementation of reforms. Thus, the fourth tranche is over €1 billion less than planned because Kyiv did not carry out all the reforms promised to the European Union. However, the amount announced today is larger than what was approved by the EU ambassadors. Ukraine's Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko has already responded to the news. She called the allocation of the payment a strong signal of trust in our course of reforms and our ability to ensure stability in the most difficult times.
President Trump has announced preparations for his meeting with Putin in Alaska, very far from this war that is taking place on our land, against our people, and which still cannot be ended without us, without Ukraine. Putin did not believe in our people, which is why he made this hopeless decision to try to take Ukraine. That was his main mistake, to disregard Ukrainians. I believe in our people, because Ukrainians are strong, Ukrainians defend what is theirs. Many people around the world have taken Ukraine's side during this war. Even those who are with Russia know that it is committing evil. Of course, we will not reward Russia for what it has done. The Ukrainian people deserve peace. But all partners must understand what a just peace means. This war needs to end, and it is Russia that must end it. Russia started this war and is dragging it out, ignoring all deadlines. And that is the problem, not anything else. The answer to the Ukrainian territorial question is already in the constitution of Ukraine. No one will or can deviate from this. Ukrainians will not give their land to the occupier. Ukraine is ready for real decisions that can bring peace. Any decisions made against us, any decisions made without Ukraine are, at the same time, decisions against peace. They will give nothing. These are dead decisions. They will never work. But what we all need is a real living peace that people will respect. We are ready, together with President Trump and all our partners, to work for a real and, most importantly, lasting peace. A peace that will not fall apart because of Moscow's wishes. I thank all our people for standing together. Ukraine exists. Thank you to all our warriors for preserving our independence. Stand strong. This is our land. We are Ukraine. Glory to Ukraine!
The Russians have started moving equipment to Belarus to take part in joint exercises. This was reported by the spokesperson of the State Border Guard Service, Andriy Demchenko. Ukraine is closely monitoring the situation. However, they consider this more of an information campaign by the enemy than a real threat. There is currently no significant contingent of Russian troops on the territory of Belarus. Despite this, all our units in this area remain on constant alert for any developments, added Andriy Demchenko. The holding of the West 2025 exercises. Russia and Belarus are planning them for September. NATO has previously stated that they are closely monitoring the situation. Similar maneuvers were conducted by the aggressor country and its accomplice on the eve of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. However, the current ones are supposedly going to be much smaller in scale. At least, that's what the president of Lithuania claimed. Today marks the deadline for the ultimatum that the President of the United States gave to Putin, a ceasefire in Ukraine or the imposition of sanctions, specifically secondary tariffs for countries. First and foremost, this concerns China and India, which remain the largest consumers of Russian oil. At the same time, preparations are underway for a personal meeting between the presidents of the U.S. and Russia, which could take place as early as next week. And we'll be discussing all of this live with TSN's own correspondent in the U.S., Ol Koshelenko. She's joining us right now from Washington. So welcome, Ol. Let's start with the sanctions. Will they be imposed? Will they not? Or have they been postponed until after the meeting with Putin? Tell us everything you know.
Hello, colleague. Donald Trump himself, who seems to enjoy being so unexpected and unpredictable, isn't giving a direct answer to this question. And when he was asked the day before in the Oval Office whether the deadline for Vladimir Putin still stands or if anything has changed in that regard, he said that first, we need to hear what Putin has to say. After all, it's no longer a secret that their personal meeting is being prepared, and obviously, it will take place as soon as next week. At the same time, Fox News, which has very strong sources in the White House, reports that despite this, sanctions against countries that buy Russian oil will be announced, and they will be announced today. And as an argument, it is stated that Trump is very disappointed with Putin. Supposedly, at first he genuinely hoped that Putin would meet him halfway on the issue of ending the war in Ukraine. But things didn't turn out as expected, and eventually it became clear that Putin was actually deceiving him, saying one thing and doing another. That's why there will be sanctions. And this very same information, that sanctions could be imposed as early as today, also citing sources in Donald Trump's administration,
is being reported by the British TV channel Sky News. And let's listen to what Trump himself had to say about this the day before.
Is your deadline for Putin still in effect, or has something changed? We know what he'll say. That depends on him. Very disappointed.
The White House is not specifying exactly what the sanctions will be. It is known that secondary tariffs are being considered for countries that buy Russian oil. By the way, regarding India, which is the world's second largest consumer of Russian oil after China, Trump has already signed the sanctions, and they are set to take effect in just under 3 weeks, amounting to 50%. CNN also reports that sanctions against the shadow fleet transporting Russian oil are being considered as an option. So, Alia, today we'll be watching closely and waiting to see if the sanctions will be announced today, right before the meeting with Putin.
And by the way, Alia, speaking of the meeting itself, Trump and Putin are supposed to meet next week. At least that's what the White House is saying. So, what details are already known?
So, for now we can only talk about versions put forward by the press, citing sources. Yes, Trump confirms that he is ready to meet with Putin, as he says, to stop the killings. But there is still no specific date or location yet. Fox News, citing sources, says that this meeting is most likely to take place at the end of next week, and while the location is still unknown, Hungary, Switzerland, the Italian capital Rome, and the United Arab Emirates are being considered. Sky News also reports that Trump recently discussed with the Italian Prime Minister the possibility of holding a meeting with Putin in Rome, or more precisely, in the Vatican. But as is well known, Putin is subject to an arrest warrant in countries that are members of the International Criminal Court. So it's unlikely he would choose any of those countries. Similarly, there are reports in the press about what exactly might become the subject of the agreement, since it's clear that by the time of the negotiations, some concrete decision must already be prepared for the presidents to discuss. And for now, there are various versions. The latest report, according to Bloomberg, is that a certain document is being prepared about freezing the war more or less along the front line. But the agreement, they say, is still very raw and it's too early to talk about anything concrete. At the same time, Fox News reports that the meeting might not happen at all, because Ukraine's President Zelensky has once again confirmed to the Trump administration that he is not going to make any territorial concessions to Russia. He says that this would contradict our constitution. And I want to tell you more about the preparations for this meeting and all the main trends in the following report. The anticipation of the Trump-Putin meeting is being fueled most actively in the Kremlin. After the visit of the U.S. Special Representative Steve Witkoff to Moscow, Western media were the first to report on the possibility of one-on-one talks, citing their sources. They claim that Donald Trump himself allegedly told Western leaders and the president of Ukraine about this during a group call on Wednesday. But at the official level, Washington has not confirmed this. President Trump only said that the chances for a meeting are good. Meanwhile, Russian officials, including Putin's advisor Ushakov and Special Representative Dmitriev, were quick to report that the meeting could take place in the coming days. Putin, when asked about negotiations next week, nods affirmatively and suggests that the United Arab Emirates could be the venue. The main emphasis is that the desire to meet was mutual.
Interest was shown by both sides. Who said the first word doesn't matter?
But there is less enthusiasm for this meeting from the American side, at least publicly. The New York Post even reported that Trump is supposedly willing to talk to Putin if he also talks to Zelensky. The Russian dictator once again dismissed such a possibility the day before. He says that certain preconditions are needed, and they are still a long way off.
For the meeting to take place, Putin has to meet with Zelensky, a White House representative told the Post. The location of the meeting has not yet been determined.
However, Trump himself later denied making such a demand of Putin.
Does Putin have to meet with Zelensky for you to meet with Putin?
No, he would very much like to meet with me personally, and I will do absolutely everything I possibly can to stop these terrible killings.
What exactly Putin promised Special Envoy Witkoff during their meeting on Wednesday, which led Trump to announce significant progress in the negotiations, remains unknown. This week, Bloomberg published information about a possible air ceasefire, which would generally benefit Putin. He is supposedly ready to stop terrorizing Ukrainian cities with drones and missiles, which have no military value, if Kiev refrains from launching its own drones at Russian factories and oil refineries that serve the military-industrial complex. The Polish outlet Onet reports, Witkoff allegedly came with a proposal to Putin to cease fire in exchange for recognition of the occupied territories and to postpone the issue for 49 or 99 years. As a result, the Kremlin would get rid of most sanctions and, in the long run, return to the energy market. No matter what versions appear in the information space, the president of Ukraine, drawing on his experience, commented on the negotiation process this week with restraint and consistently emphasized the awareness and involvement of the President of the United States.
Of course, everyone knows for sure that all key decisions in Russia are made by one person, and that this person is afraid of sanctions from the United States of America and, quite rightly, does not want Ukraine to be a participant in the negotiations.
Another factor is that Putin does not want European leaders to take part in the negotiations either. But now, pushing them out of the negotiation process is not so easy. Since the United States stopped supplying weapons to Ukraine for free, European Union countries have been buying them for us from Washington. Just this week, it became known about a contract between the US and the Netherlands, Sweden, Norway, and Denmark worth over $1 billion. The president of Ukraine spoke with partners by phone the day before and coordinated efforts.
Everyone is united by the understanding that Russia's war against Ukraine is a war in Europe and against Europe. All the decisions that will be made to end this war and to guarantee security truly concern all of Europe, not just one country. That is why Europe's voice must influence the process, and we are coordinating with our European leaders regarding our talks and meetings to align all positions. Also, regarding the work each of us does with other leaders, so that Europe's positions are protected.
Meanwhile, today Trump's ultimatum expires. On August 8th, he promised to impose secondary sanctions against countries that buy Russian oil. Axios reports that European leaders were left bewildered after their conversation with the US president on Wednesday. They still didn't understand whether his intentions regarding tariffs for India and China are still relevant.
Is your deadline for Putin still in effect, or has something changed? We'll see what he says. It's up to him. Very disappointed.
Trump has already ordered the introduction of tariffs and penalties for India, which is reselling Russian oil. They are set to take effect in 3 weeks and will reach 50%. China, which is the largest buyer of Russian energy resources, hasn't been touched yet.
We're sending a ton of dollars overseas to India to buy their products under unfair trade conditions. India then uses American dollars to buy Russian oil, and Russia uses the American dollars coming from India to fund its weapons, to kill Ukrainians, and then American taxpayers are asked to pay for weapons to protect Ukraine from Russian weapons that were paid for with American dollars coming from India. This needs to stop.
Trump himself seems to have gotten a taste for keeping up the tension through uncertainty and threats. The period of declarations and public tempting offers to Putin is over, but the time for decisive action has not yet come. From Washington, United States, Ol Koshelenko, Maxim Shinkarenko, TSN, 1+1, Marathon, United News.